All right, we are back for another Friday financial wrap up with Mr. Michael Zuber. How are you, Michael?
Oh man, I'm doing awesome. I look forward to these each and every week. It is the last thing I do before I enjoy a couple of days of rest, relaxation, and I do my long training run. So I'm about to do 12 miles. So thank you for the opportunity.
I love it, man. This is for August the 16th, 2024. I want to hear more about the marathon. We're gonna save that for the end, though. 12 miles. You got me already huffing and puffing over here. Um, Speaking of huffing and puffing, what's going on with inflation, PPI? What happened this week?
Yeah, so this week is the week we got two inflation prints. Again, we get three every month: PPI, CPI, PCE, just so people can stay tuned to them. PPI is first. That's producer price index. That's essentially wholesale inflation. You could think of inflation as kind of a pipeline, and PPI is a sign of, hey, what is the grocery store paying? Now, what is the grocery store paying versus, a consumer, which is CPI, which we'll get to in a minute. But PPI this month, there's four metrics: month on month, year on year, headline, and core. All four lower than expected. All four were lower than expected. So
Interesting.
at least in the PPI level, inflation is doing better than expected. The Fed is winning.
The Fed is winning. We'll talk about rates and rate cuts and all of that at the very end. So stay tuned to the very end. What happened with CPI this week? And explain, maybe somebody they're watching for the first time, or these are new terminologies. What is CPI? Explain it and what happened this week.
Yeah, CPI is consumer price index. It's basically what you and I at the same grocery store pay at the register. So again, PPI is what the grocery store pays to get the inventory. CPI is what you and I pay at the register. Um, Unlike PPI, which was lower across the board, CPI basically came in as expected. But as expected meant basically 0.2% month on month. And oh, by the way, headline now has a two handle on it, which it hasn't had in several years. Now, again, this is disinflation, not deflation. Prices are still up. They are still going up. They are just going up at a slower rate. But we do have a two handle. It was 2.9. I thought it would be 3%, so I was wrong this week. So I wore the swing and a miss shirt. But hey, we're at 2.9. The Fed's target is an average inflation rate of 2%. The one that we really need to watch is coming out in about 10 days. It's PCE, specifically PCE 4. But yeah, again, CPI, you know, came in okay. PPI was great, right? If you're somebody that wants to see inflation fall, PPI was what you wanted. CPI was okay. But hey, at least we're in the twos now.
We're in the twos. And again, the Fed winning.
Fed's winning.
Fed's winning. Okay. Let's keep going. Let's talk about retail sales. And then also, I know we look at the retail sales numbers on a monthly basis. Does that play into any of the CPI number? And what happened this week with retail sales?
Yeah, so retail sales is an interesting one, not so much for inflation, but for the economy. Because people may not realize that the US economy is made up mainly of consumers, about 65 to 67%, the other part being government and companies, right? So we are the economy for all intents and purposes. And last month, the consumer retail sales was down. I think it was down negative, right? So contraction of like 0.1. There was expectation that we would return to being positive at 0.3. However, we came in at 1.0. So there's a lot of people saying the consumer is dead. There's a lot of people saying the economy is in recession, myself included. But when you have a retail sales pop of 1%, you got to scratch your head and go, maybe, where is this recession? And again, the consumer is so interesting. The consumers can feel negative, right? I think there was something I talked about earlier in the week. 59% of consumers think we're in a recession. But people are weird. You might think we're in a recession and it impacts your neighbors, but you could be thinking, hey, I'm good. I'm solid. I'm going to go take a trip. I'm going to go to Iceland. I'm going to go to Hawaii. I'm going to go to Mexico. And what you have is just, consumers feeling like we're in a recession, but acting like we're not. So, dude, retail sales up 1%. That impacted the market on Thursday when it came out. And yeah, It's hard to have a recession when retail sales are up 1% in a month. That's crazy.
Very, very interesting times. Wow. So, I mean, I feel like too, over the last 90, let's call it even the last 3, 4, 5 months, we talked about the consumer slowing down, but this is actually showing us something different. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, it's also one of those numbers you want to see follow through. We've seen a pretty consistent downward revision. Also, it might be a sign of back to school shopping and more grocery. And like Walmart had great earnings Thursday morning. Maybe it's a trade down economy. Clearly, we have a K-shaped economy where 20 or 25% of the economy or consumers are balling out, where a larger percent are struggling. Unfortunately, that's the nastiness of inflation. Um, but yeah, I don't think you can have a recession if retail sales are up 1% month on month consistently.
Very interesting. We haven't said the K-shape economy. You haven't said that in a long, long time. And so some people are doing really well, other people are struggling, and that is the K-shape. The this way,
Yeah.
that way. Got it. Got
Yeah.
it. Love it. Great and out. Great. Yeah, I love it. I love it. So let's keep going. Let's talk about weekly unemployment. And I know this is a big one. We said this for months now that unemployment is really one of these big indicators. What happened this week in your thoughts?
It's even bigger than that because when we saw earlier, I think it was 3 weeks ago, when we got that bad jobs number and we saw the unemployment rate spike to 4.3%, we had everybody and their mother screaming emergency rate cut, this, that, the other, the world is ending kind of thing, like Jeremy Siegel. What people don't realize is inside that very weak jobs number, there was some kind of indication that maybe it was harder hit by the Texas hurricane than was led on. And what I asked people to do is that Thursday, we got a very weak weekly unemployment claims. If you remember, it spiked to 252. And I told you, hey, we got to watch this because we've been sitting at 220, 230 for a long time.
Yep.
This pop to 252 is concerning, right? If this continues up and we suddenly have the elevator up on unemployment, nastiness is coming. But I also told you that we've got to see if there's any truth to this Texas hurricane. Now, last week when we spoke, we saw it come down like 17,000. So we were like in the high 230s. Well, this week, the most important week, because we want a trend, it came down again. So there might be some validity in truth in that weak jobs number kind of have a give back. So what does that look like? Well, if this data is right, and there was an impact in the jobs number because of the hurricane, you are going to see the unemployment rate probably pick down in the next earnings or the next employment number. So it'll go back to like 4.2. So I don't know. Can the Fed really cut interest rates when the retail sales are up 1%, when the unemployment rate is going backwards? Can they really cut rates like people are thinking they're going to do in September? I don't know. I don't know.
Very interesting. Boy, we are in an interesting time. I mean, it's just talk about uncertainty. Let's keep going, and we're going to finish strong. So this is obviously one of our shorter, kind of a fast and to the point show. We're going to talk about opportunity. We always finish on opportunity, but even, I know I have show notes here that say Refi Boom. And so let's talk about Refi Boom. And then also let's kind of connect the dots to where do you see rates going? And then also the Fed, September. We've talked a lot about that, for months or for weeks, maybe if not months, about, September, November. When is the Fed? Does the Fed? How much? Bring it home with Refi Boom, and then let's connect the dots to the Fed.
Yeah, Refi Boom is something I got right. When we saw those rates drop after that very weak jobs number, I said that's it. Refi Boom is underway, and boy, was that a great call. We saw refis spike last week like 6 or 7%. This week, 35%.
Wow.
They're up 118% year on year. I got to tell you, we got that one right. Now, when you look at refi booms, I look at it as like, okay, what kind of refis? Because here's the deal. You can have two kinds. You can have a rate and term refi, which basically means mom and dad keep more money at the end of the month, right? You lower your monthly or shelter costs by $200. That's called a rate and term refi. The other option is cash out, right? If you're going to do a cash out refi, you're getting a bucket of money. Are you paying down credit cards? Are you creating a reserve because you're scared? Are you opening a business? Are your kids going to college? Are you putting in a backyard? I don't know. But the reason this is important is we are currently sitting on record levels of home equity. And if we do get a refi boom of the cash out refi type, there's a lot of asset owners that are about to have a lot of cash. And as general consumers, we suck at saving money. So that money might sit in the account for a little while, but you'll start spending it. And that could keep the economy going. So we could have a cash out refi boom, which I'm not calling for yet. I'm just painting the vision. It could happen. That just keeps the party going. So asset owners win and, others don't. So that's refi boom.
Well, I want to comment on this too, and I want to connect some dots here, is that the refi boom, going back to KShape Recovery, right? People with assets, people with lots and lots and lots of equity who maybe tap into that equity, potentially even going back to show notes of retail sales, that we just see the economy, again, potentially even something you've talked about, a soft landing.
Yeah.
So this all could literally all be tied together, and
good.
A lot to keep, to anticipate and keep our eye on. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah. I mean, again, my hope is we don't treat our houses like ATMs and we don't repeat that of 08. But yeah, I mean, you could play the dominoes out where the party keeps going and we don't have a recession because 67% of folks own a home and they go back and, take out 20, 30, 40 grand. And again, that wouldn't be horrible LTVs, loan to value. It's possible. I'm watching it.
It's something to watch, something to look at. So let's talk about the 30-year mortgage rate. Where is it today? And just kind of, how do you think this plays out? It's, basically we're leaning towards September. Can't believe it's almost fall. Kids are back in school for a lot of people this week, last week, the last few weeks. What do you see with the 30-year mortgage? Where's it at and where do we go from here?
Yeah, so you got to watch 30 mortgage. Again, it did collapse to like 6.3% after that very weak job numbers. It's given that all back. We're kind of sitting at 6.6. I think I said on this show, I was hoping we'd be 6.6, 6.7 for the rest of the year.
Yep.
When we saw that spike to 6.3, I'm like, oh, dude, this is not good. We go below 6. I'm afraid for what happened. Thankfully, we didn't get there, right? It came back relatively quickly. But yeah, my hope is we just stay 6.6, 6.7. The housing market is healing. It is getting better. Inventory is building. We still have a bifurcated market where the stuff above the median is stacking and below the median. You and I were on a hub call on Monday, which I thought was amazing when Patrick Kim gave us this nugget. And I ask everybody to look at their buy box the same way. In Fresno, California, according to Patrick Kim on Monday, there's a video you can go back and watch. The median home price sold is $440. The median home price of active listings is $570. So ask yourself, how could that happen? We have a broken housing market. There's nothing coming on the market at the low end, and all the high end stuff is stacking up. That spread from a sold of 440 to an active of 570, I have never heard of something that crazy. But that just tells you of a bifurcated housing market.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Something you've been talking about. I never even heard the term bifurcated market. So until we started working together. So I love this. So let's talk about, let's connect the dots and finish. We're going to always finish on opportunity, but let's talk about the Fed. September, November, how many 50 basis points? What are you seeing right now? I know, and we're not attached to, we were calling for November for a long time. What do you see today?
Yeah, so I'm going to stick with November 50%, but I'll give everybody, because I like to stick to my calls unless enough evidence has changed and I'm like, okay, I have a new opinion. If you put a gun to my head right now, I think there's a 60% chance they cut a quarter in September. However, we have 4 very important numbers coming up that could change that, in my opinion, to 0. Most specifically, the jobs number. If the jobs number kind of auto corrects for that Texas hurricane and we go from 4.3 to 4.2, which I think is certainly possible, if not likely. I don't know how the Fed cuts with unemployment going backwards and inflation basically being 3%. I can't get there. And then you throw on top of that their desire not to be political.
Yep.
Here's the deal. Is a September rate cut possible? Absolutely. My hope or belief is it has to be painfully obvious. What would be painfully obvious? If the unemployment rate in early September goes from 4.3 to 4.5, okay, now we have a problem, right? We've started the elevator up. Like if we have a 4.5% unemployment rate the first week of September, I think a September rate cut's 100%. And probably is the right move because the job market is falling apart. If inflation, we get a PPI and a CPI reading right before the Fed announcement. If they drop to like 2.5 because rental inflation finally rolled over, probably okay to cut. But absent those extreme moves, I just don't know how you cut in September given your desire not to be political. And oh, by the way, let's be clear, November is only 6 weeks away.
Right.
And that's why I have always thought they would delay September, but cut 50 in November. It would be kind of the makeup. Yeah. So I'm not as convinced of that as I was a month ago, which when at that time I was way early. But I still think that's a pretty good call. You know, it's you know, I'm not as, you know, I don't know that I would bet big money on it, but I put a little money on it.
I think it's interesting too that I mean, you just summed it up so well. It comes down to the unemployment number. Is it if the unemployment spikes a little bit to 4.5%, then they're definitely going to cut.
Because you got a trend, because that's critical. Because if you have the trend 3.4, 3.6, 3.8, 3.9, 4.1, 4.3, 4.5, problem. Houston, we have a problem. Cut rates. But if it does that, it goes 4.3 and it goes back to 4.2 or goes to 4.1. I don't know how you cut in September. Just wait till November. Let the election happen. Cut in November.
And something too that I want to remind the frequent listener viewer is that you've always said you always were under the impression that he'll always go a next meeting
one
longer,
extra, yes,
just to be safe, to make sure that he's not reigniting the fire onto inflation. Is that?
I firmly believe that. The only question I have, does he go September longer, aka November, or was July the month he should have cut and thus he'll cut in September? That's the only thing I'm looking at, because there were calls for a July rate cut. And, you know, if you squint enough and look at the data enough, you could have seen a 1/4 point. So was July the month that he waited extra, or will it be September? So yes, I do believe he is always going to go 1 month or one meeting longer. We're going to find out in September, I guess.
Very interesting times. I love, this is fun, man. This is really fun to, I love riding your wave. So this is awesome. So let's finish strong. Opportunity, the one rental at a time community, right? They're doing the work. People are looking for opportunities. They have their buy box. What are your thoughts on opportunity?
Well, the good news is I was getting a little nervous that the buyer's market I called would evaporate when rates hit 6.3. I was like, this is going to be the shortest buyer's market I've ever seen. But that quickly reversed within a week, and we're now back to 6.6, 6.7. So congratulations. The buyer's market is intact. We have probably 5, maybe 6 months where we will be rewarded for doing the work. I want to give you a personal example from Casey from Brick by Brick, who shared it on Monday. She found a house in her market listed for $240 in an A neighborhood. That house was listed for 3 weeks. That house then had a price drop from $240 to $219. Casey saw that. Casey said, ooh, let's get interested. Let's start running some numbers. She realized that she could not make a Class A neighborhood cash flow unless she bought it for significantly less. So after another week after the price drop with no activity, she wrote up an offer at $204 with 2% closing cost credit paid by the seller, which equaled about $4,000. The seller accepted. She then did a inspection report and got another, I think, $2,000 in credit. So she basically paid $202 with $4,000 in closing costs credit. Now, why did that work? Buyer's market. Why did that work? Motivated seller. Why did that work? The seller was buying a new home and they needed this home to close on or before the date of their new construction. So they had a compelling event other than price. And she found it. Now, it's not always easy. You got to kiss a lot of frogs. You got to ride a lot of offers. But if we are in a buyer's market, like I firmly believe, it gets easier finding motivated sellers. Casey did. She got an A-class house for roughly 20% off because she took her shot. She knew her numbers. One rental at a time is about that attitude. Let me be clear. Do not pay list price. Buyers have the power.
Strong.
Write the offers.
So strong. So strong. Well, there you go, folks. Michael, how can they get involved with you? What's the best way for them to plug into this community and go a step further?
Right now, the best thing I'm doing right now and thing I'm most proud of is One Rental at a Time School. It is a community that, yes, has a monthly fee of a whopping $20. It keeps away the trolls and the haters. But now we have over 227 members interacting, asking questions, taking advantage of all the free training. We got a 10-week boot camp in there with 6 hours on creative financing. It is the spot to be. Join school, join today. You get around all the millionaires, you get around other amazing folks. You get in a network of like-minded people. To me, school is the place you got to be if you're a new investor. You're an investor getting started, moving forward. I hope to see you there.
I love it. Get involved with school. I'm going to be hosting about 10 days from now. I'll be hosting a live Q&A just for the school community, the One Rental at a Time school community. I would love for you to connect with us. Please subscribe, like, follow, share. Michael, have a great weekend. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, buddy.